Hi, my name is Daniel Gwynn, and today I'm going to be presenting my animal locomotion lab experiment. This experiment I conducted for diversity and adaptations through Athens State University with Dr. Pittman. So first, let's cover the basic objectives for this presentation. First, I'm going to cover the background information on why I chose the species that I chose, the blue jay, and the background information on the experiment. And then I'll cover the research question that I plan to ask and hopefully to answer with this experiment. Then afterwards, I'll cover the materials and methods that I used to answer that question. Next, I'll cover the results that I found after looking at the statistics provided by Dr. Pittman regarding this experiment. And then finally, I'll discuss the implications and confounding factors that I faced. So first, let's talk about the background information. So the blue jay, the species that I'm looking at is the blue jay, and I'm going to be addressing the amount of time blue jays spend at a bird feeder in the morning versus the afternoon. And so the blue jay is a large songbird commonly found year-round east of the Rockies, as far south as Florida and as far north as southern Canada. They are known by their blue, white, and black plumage and the tuft that appears on their head. Blue jays are often associated with backyard feeders. They prefer tray feeders and hoppers on posts rather than hanging feeders. Their diet in the wild mainly consists of nuts and insects, but on feeders they like peanuts, sunflower seeds, and they really enjoy acorns. So a fun fact about the blue jay is that they are considered to have played a chief role in spreading oak trees because of their fondness of acorns, spreading the oak trees after the last glacial period. So I thought that was really neat. I picked the blue jay mainly because my yard is home to several of them. I see them all the time. They just fill the yard. I can commonly see 10 to 15 of them out there at a given time. So I picked the blue jay mainly because of that. And I love that they congregate around my feeder. And so I was just really curious about that. Also, there are many different species that visited the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's live webcam. And that's what I used to examine this question. And since there were so many birds that appeared on that feeder at one point, I just chose to pick one species, and I just really like the blue jay mainly because of its coloration. So the research question that I'm asking. So the basic research question that I'm asking in this experiment is, do blue jays spend more time foraging at bird feeders at 6 a.m. or at 12 p.m.? So a null hypothesis would be this: there is no difference between the amount of time blue jays spend at the feeder in the morning and the evening. And the alternative hypothesis would be there is a difference in the amount of time the birds spend at the feeder in the morning and the afternoon. So under the null hypothesis, we would expect there to be not a difference at all. And then under the alternative, there would be a difference in the amount of time they spend. So let's talk about the materials and methods that I used. So the materials and methods. Well, what is the independent variable in this experiment? And that would be the time of day. So the two independent variables would be 6 a.m. and 12 p.m. And then independent variable we're looking at is the time spent at the feeder. And so that addresses the question. And so this is an observational experiment, which I wrote twice on this presentation. And it's also random. And it's random because of, well, A, it's observational, but B, it's observational because I couldn't choose which birds appeared on the feeder at any given point. witnessed what I saw at the feeder, and then recorded the information. So hopefully it's as unbiased as possible. And so I'll be also looking at, like I mentioned earlier, the Cornell Lab feeder watch cam. And this was in Ithaca, New York, I believe. And it's free to watch on YouTube, and that's where I accessed it. So this gives so here I've provided just the screenshot of what I'm seeing, and then I provided a screenshot of how I'm recording the time. And so how I could briefly describe my experiment would be this. I will access the Cornell Lab feeder watch cam at Sapsucker Woods in Ithaca, New York. I'll start watching the feeder at 6 a.m. for 1 hour. And then again, I will start watching at 12 p.m. and watch for 1 hour. I will measure the time each blue jay spends foraging at the bird feeder. And so I'll just record that with my stopwatch. So every time they land on the bird feeder, I press go. And then when they leave the bird feeder, I press stop. So just as basic as that. And then I'll measure the means from in the morning and in the afternoon. So the results after measuring that. So this statistical test provided by Dr. Pittman states that the p-value was less than 0.05. So the p-value is actually 0.00445. So very low. And then over here on the right, you can see the means depicted in a bar graph. And in the morning, you can see the means hovered around 23.4. In the afternoon, the mean 10.8. So just looking at that graph and the p-value, I would think there would be a difference. So let's talk about the results. So like I said, the p-value 0.00445. And so the p-value is very, very small. So that's less than 1. If we did this experiment 100 times, it'd be less than, we'd find this result less than once. So therefore, there's a very slim chance that we would see this result if the null hypothesis was true. So I've decided to reject the null hypothesis and accept the alternative. The alternative hypothesis is there is a difference. So there is a difference in the amount of time the bird spent at the feeder in the morning and in the afternoon. So the observed difference in proportion in the time blue jays spent at the bird feeder in the morning and the afternoon would be too large to attribute to random chance. So we couldn't just expect that to randomly occur with the random variations that typically occur. So what are the implications that I came across in some confounding factors? So the first would be, it appears to confirm my pre-existing thoughts that birds do spend more time out foraging in the mornings rather than the afternoons. And that's just basic information that I've acquired over the years. And so I was really curious to see if that would be the case on a feeder. And the results would say yes. There were, the birds did spend less time in the afternoons than they did in the mornings. But there were some other confounding factors that I faced. First, I provided a picture here. A pretty large squirrel landed on the feeder at 12:40 p.m. And like I said, I measured it for an hour. And so a lot of birds are showing up early. And then at 12:40, the squirrel jumped onto the feeder and scared off most of the birds. And it stayed on the feeder up until right at 1 p.m. So it stayed there for the better part of an hour, really. And so I think it scared off most of the birds. And so the other confounding factor I noticed, that many other species outcompeted species I was looking at, the blue jay. And so these other species were red-winged blackbirds and grackles. And they approached the feeder in large flocks. And so anywhere from 3 to 6 at a time for each species. And every time they did that, the blue jays would kind of scatter. And so I did notice with my results that a lot of blue jays approached the feeder in the afternoon. And so I actually noticed more blue jays approached the feeder in the afternoon than I did in the evening. But or than I did in the morning, but they were kind of just flybys. They didn't actually really touch the feeder. They just kind of were stopped by for less than a second, and I couldn't even touch record on the stopwatch. So that's what I found. I would like to do an experiment in the future where I measured all the different species over multiple days, and that way I feel like I could get a better result. I did access the feeder again the next day, and noticed that the squirrel also showed up at approximately the same exact time. And so it might just be a recurring habit for the squirrel as well. But I think we could look at this if we just studied the feeder for longer amounts of time over many days. And so here are my references. I accessed the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's LabCam, and then, or the feeder watch cam, and then I also looked at a Blue Jay overview on All About Birds on the Cornell Lab of Ornithology's website, and they provided a lot of the background information. But that's my experiment. Hope you enjoyed it. Thank you.